All right, hello and welcome. If you're anywhere in southern India right now, you're probably looking outside and seeing some pretty active weather. So today, we're going to dive right in and unpack the fascinating and pretty complex patterns that are causing all this rain. It's a really dynamic situation, so let's get to it.
So let's just cut to the chase. The big question on everyone's mind is what's really behind all this heavy rain we're seeing? Because let me tell you, it's not as simple as just pointing to one single storm. To really get it, we've got to zoom out and look at the whole picture.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we really do need to pull back and look at the whole map. And when we do, two major weather systems just pop right out at you. You've got this really impressive-looking cyclone churning away in the Arabian Sea, and then there's this other system, a bit of a shadow of its former self that came from the Bay of Bengal. And here's where it gets really interesting, because you can see the contrast right here. On one side, you have Cyclone Shakti. I mean, look at it, a severe cyclone. It looks super dramatic. And then on the other side, you have this weakened, low-pressure system that honestly doesn't look like much. So your first instinct, right? You'd think the big, powerful cyclone is the one causing all the trouble. But, and this is the key point, it's not.
So why isn't this monster storm our problem? Well, it all comes down to where it's going and what's happening around it. See, it's moving towards Oman, but it's not even going to make it to the coast. There's this thing called a westerly disturbance that's creating what we call wind shear. Think of it like a crosswind that literally starts to tear the storm apart from the top down. So the cyclone is actually going to loop back out into the sea and just fizzle out. Bottom line, Shakti is not a major threat to India.
Okay, so if the big, scary cyclone isn't the culprit, then what is? Where is all this rain actually coming from? To find the real answer, we have to ignore the big, showy storm and zoom in on the much smaller, local systems that are the true rainmakers here. And here they are. This is the recipe for the rain we're seeing. First, you've got this thing called an upper air cyclonic circulation. Just picture a spinning pocket of air way up high, about 6,400 feet, over the southwest Bay of Bengal. That's ingredient number one. Ingredient number two is a trough, which is basically a long, stretched-out zone of low pressure that runs all the way from Karnataka down to the Kanyakumari Sea. Now, you put those two systems together, they interact, and bam! You get the perfect setup for all this widespread convective rain. That's our culprit.
All right, so now we know why it's raining. Let's get down to the practical stuff, where it's going to rain. We're going to go state by state and look at what you can expect over the next 24 hours, all thanks to that interaction we just talked about.
First up, let's head down to Kerala, where the forecast is really showing a clear split depending on where you are.
Yeah, you can really see the divide here. We're expecting moderate to heavy rain in places like Kannur, Ernakulam, Idukki, and that whole stretch down through Kollam and through Venanthapuram. But on the other hand, if you're in Alappuzha, Thrissur, or Wayanad, you're probably going to see much lighter, more scattered showers. A tale of two forecasts, really.
Okay, let's move up north a bit into Karnataka. Here, we're looking at a pretty significant band of rain that's going to affect a whole bunch of key districts.
So you can expect moderate to even heavy rainfall in cities like Bangalore and Kolar, and that band is stretching north right through Gulbarga, Raichur, and Bellary. If you're in other parts of the state, it'll probably be a bit lighter.
All right, now for Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Both of these states are really bracing for some very active weather patterns. For Andhra Pradesh, the main story is going to be widespread thunderstorms. You'll want to keep an eye out for some especially heavy downpours in the Nellore and Prakasam districts. Over in Telangana, it's a similar story, widespread moderate to heavy rain, and there are specific heavy rain alerts out for places like the Grabad and the southern suburbs of Hyderabad.
And last but not least, let's talk about Tamil Nadu, where the situation is really interesting because it varies so much depending on where you are in the state.
So let's start with the south. The southern districts, we're talking all the way from Kanyakumari up through Madurai and Sivaganga, are definitely on watch for moderate to heavy rain. Then you have the central delta districts, places like Trichy, Tanjavur, Nagapattinam. They're also looking at widespread thunderstorms. Now, over in the west, places like the Nilgiris and Salem are going to see widespread rain. But here's the really crucial part, the difference up north. If you're in the interior northern districts, like Tiruvannamalai, you're looking at moderate to heavy rain. But if you're on the coast, and that includes Chennai, it's a totally different story. You'll likely just get cloudy skies with maybe a little bit of light rain.
That's a huge difference. So that covers the next 24 hours. But weather never just stands still, does it? So let's shift gears and look ahead to the coming week, because there's a brand new weather system starting to make its way toward us from the east. And this timeline lays it all out perfectly. Check this out. Around October 12th, a new system starts to get its act together way out in the South China Sea. Then, a day or two later, on the 13th and 14th, those easterly winds start pushing into the Bay of Bengal, and that's what's going to kick off a whole new round of rain, starting in southern Tamil Nadu. And then, follow the progression. By the 15th and 16th, those same winds march northward, bringing the rain with them to northern Tamil Nadu. It's just a really clear step-by-step advance. Seeing this constantly shifting weather map really brings us to a final thought. As these patterns seem to get more dynamic and more complex, it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How do we best prepare ourselves for these kinds of rapidly changing conditions? It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for joining me.